And as usual, when I begin the broadcast, I'm gonna ask how everybody's doing, and when I ask that, you're gonna go. And we are live. Welcome to the February meetup, everybody. How are you doing? Awesome. Today we have a very awesome guest from the local scene, but just before we go into that, I'm gonna go through the, usuals. So these meetups, they are brought to you by Expa's Digi and Game Center partners, which are JAMK University of Applied Sciences, Business Development Services of Jyväskylä, Fingersoft, DeskMe, Seltimil, Keski-Suomen Konttori.piste, and Game Makers of Finland. If this is your first time visiting the Digi and Game Center, you can find the toilets in the main lobby or in the end of that corridor. And tonight is a great opportunity, like every day, to become a member of Expa. So once we are done with the officials, if you want to join the cooperative, we have people here who can advise you how to do that and how to join our channels in Slack and become a member of the community. So just come say hi and let's talk more. Honing the traditions of the Finnish game development scene, we have a demo corner here tonight. So after the talks and Q&As and so on, the people on site have the privilege of testing out some games. And we also have the open mic opportunity here if you want to pitch your own game or project, whether it's in the corner or not today. But yeah, Expa meetups are about sharing and caring, putting the information and latest news of the industry out there from a personal experience point of view. And tonight we have a local point of view to the scene. So, Zaibatsu Inc. is a success story of Jyväskylä. And tonight, CTO Tarmo Jussila is joining us for the very first time with his journey story. So, perhaps without further ado, let's give a huge applause to Tarmo.
All right. Thanks, Wanda, for the introduction. It's great to be here, and it's great to have all of you here hearing my speech. I'm a very traditional Finnish game developer, so I don't really do these speeches often. So every 10 years I crawl out of my cave and come to the presentation, and then I go back to the next 10 years and maybe come back after that. So yeah, but
very special event tonight.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad you're all here. And today I'm going to be telling you about my personal game industry journey so far. And to tell my journey, I'm actually going to have to do the part 0, very programmer humor, because we start the iterations from 0, but the mandatory intro, because as you know, just came out of my cave, so you probably don't even know who I am. So let's get this introduction out of the way. All right, we can continue. So it's me, Tarmo. So some career highlights about me. I'm the CTO at Zaibatsu, past Expa board member as well. I was actually part of the board for 6 years. It was a great experience for me. And also a past visiting lecturer at JAMK. Maybe some familiar faces here as well from some of my courses, maybe, perhaps. And some other specs about me. I've been a gamer since always, since I can remember, basically. And I've been making games as a hobby since 2005. And that hobby became a profession in 2015 when I joined the ranks at Zaibatsu as a trainee. So today I'm going to be covering that around 20 years period, 10 years as a hobby and 10 years as a profession, kind of between that balance. And a little bit about Zaibatsu Interactive, in case you didn't know. So Zaibatsu is a game development studio based here in Jyväskylä, Finland. I founded in 2014, so just turning 10 this year. And in a nutshell, we're a 20 people strong studio. We focus on mobile games. It's not all we do web, we do Nintendo Switch, a little bit of everything. But to keep this simple about Zaibatsu, we focus on mobile. And business-wise, we're doing co-development with partners, whether those partners are publishers, IP holders, other studios here in Finland or globally. That's the core of it. But enough about that stuff. Just celebrating the 10 years. Look at the confetti, yay. But now I'd really like to go back to the past. And before I started making games, before that time. So this is where it all started. Started with Sonic the Hedgehog. I was playing with Sega Mega Drive 2nd edition at my home, and this was one of the first digital games I played as a kid. So it's of course very influential to me because it's the first game, as the first games tend to be. It's not the only one, of course. I played other games as well, Toe Jam and Earl on the Sega Mega Drive, Street Fighter 2, those were important as well. And from the first Sonic game to these games, I think the shift was that these games had local multiplayer. And that was a game changer because you could play the game with someone else, have that experience with someone else. So I think it's really important. And to memorize other games as well, this was the shift from the Sega to the DOS era to the Windows and PC world when I started playing other games like Mind Bombers. And this is a very iconic game in the Finnish scene, as you know, probably. Many of you have played this game at some point. And I think it was magical that 4 people would really cram together to the same keyboard and play this game together. And I think those days were really magical. Those were something else.
Just get that a bit closer so you can see.
Thank you. Moving forward, this is one rare picture I could find from the early days when I'm sitting in front of a computer. It was hard to come by these pictures. So this is one of the first ones. I'm there in the front, as you can easily recognize, my friend in the background. We're actually playing Desperados 1 in this photo. I got it from the Kellogg's cereal box. It was a demo in the cereal box, and it was really great to play that game back then. Great memories still about that game, and it still stands up, that game, to the standards of today. So I recommend it. But what the learnings from this era of playing games was that, well, playing games is really fun. It's a fun pastime. And playing together is even more fun. And at that time, I really started to ask questions. How was that thing made? How was that game made? How was that particular feature made? So it really sparked the interest into making these things myself. And this brings me to the next part. Hello World. So this is where the cool stuff starts, actually. And by cool, I of course mean Cool Basic. It's a game engine, and it's also a programming language. It's all crammed together. It was made by a Finnish guy called Jukka Lavonen. I think the point of Cool Basic was to make something really approachable for Finnish developers. I'm sure he had more ambitions than that, but in the initial phase, all the documentation, all the guides and stuff, tutorials were in Finnish. So that made it really approachable to a 12-year-old kid to start programming something. So finding Cool Basic and the Cool Basic manual was really something else. And over time, I also found out about something on the Finnish web pages like suomipelit.com or pelisivut.org, CP Corner. These were all these small underground communities related around Finnish games and developing games. And also these communities, many times they hosted these game creation competitions. This was really close to what we call game jams today, but back then I hadn't really ever heard about anything about game jams. But these game creation competitions, they seem to pop up everywhere in the mid-20s, with 2000s, somewhere around that. So this led me to develop some games, and I wanted to participate in those competitions. This is a screenshot from one of my early games, but I really couldn't find a screenshot from the initial version, which looked like shit. So this is from a later edition, this screenshot here. But anyways, this game participated in the competition. If I can remember correctly, it was a competition by CP Corner, and it placed 5th on that competition. So gaining that experience participating in a competition, it was great learning experience. And it continues. I made another game called Raivo. And this was, I think the teen angst shows in this game, because it was a game where you had to run over people. I mean, today this wouldn't be published anywhere, but back then suomipelit.com took this game. I participated in their competition, and the main prize was Nintendo Wii. I was really aiming for that main prize in that summer competition. And I placed 4th, and I can say there were more than 4 competitions, at least 10 to 15 people. So placing 4th in a competition like that is quite spectacular. There was no prize for the 4th place, unfortunately, so only the podium positions got something. But nevertheless, I think the experience of doing something like that and placing relatively high on a competition like that was also a great experience for me. And this goes on. I made another game. It was called Lima. It was a bit later, a bit after Raivo. It was released in Jonneweb, which you might know. It's a notorious Finnish website of Jonnes gathering, and it was a gaming portal basically. And back then, maybe not so notorious, it was a place where you downloaded games and you played those games. And it was really an underground community of games, and getting released in that community meant something back then for me. So this was also part of the journey. And it doesn't stop there. There's also Tonttu. And as you can see, there's a progression here. Tonttu now placed 1st in a competition by pelisivut.org. And that was a key moment in this progression, I think. And you want to know what the first prize was? The grand prize was Aku Ankan taskukirja, so Donald Duck magazine. So no Nintendo Wii this time, because it was an even more underground site than the previous one. So this was the grand prize I got. But nevertheless, receiving a prize through mail at your house, I think that was, I could never imagine being in that place. So level up. And it was all downhill from there. So I tried to get serious. I tried to get too serious, and I rebranded my previously not branded gaming company to Kulo Games. And I tried to create this like serious brand. Now I want to do things right. I want to stop doing these games that are just made in a few days to a gaming competition. I want to make something that gets recognized. So I made this Kulo Games brand. And I tried so hard to develop skills to create graphics that could be used in those games. So I created all these 2D graphics, and I ended up doing like dozens and dozens of different prototypes that I could work with for a weekend maybe. And then I just dropped it, took another project and started with that. So this meant that I was building this asset library of 2D graphics, but there was no game there, just no game. And I wasn't satisfied with this. So I went forward and I tried to learn 3D graphics. And this was like a new level for me. I tried to make everything, and it was the same pattern again. I was making these different concepts, and some of those turned into prototypes, but never into a game that you could play. So again, it's a library of random assets that don't fit together. So that meant no Kulo games. I could never do that serious approach to making games in the Kulo Games era. And this was maybe when I was in high school, that period of my life. So I also had other priorities maybe that kind of led me off from that path. So the learnings from this was that making just a game, just any game is easy. Making a good game is hard, but releasing something is important. So releasing anything, going through the hurdle of developing a concept, developing a prototype, then marketing that even to like a limited community, and then putting that out to that community to play and get the feedback. I think going through that loop is nevertheless really important. And I also learned that finishing a project is really hard. So I have a catalog of dozens of different concepts and prototypes that I could never find myself to finish. So it's a really shame. So I started to doubt myself. I started asking questions, is this really for me? Is this what I want to do? And then time goes by. Part 3, hobby to a profession. This is my pathway through studies to an internship. So next up, I go to the mandatory Finnish army service, and it really gave me some time to think. I really had to like consider what I just out of high school, what I want to do, what do I want to study, what do I want to do in life. So this gave me like a break to think about those priorities. And I applied for some schools late in the army service. And I got to study at JAMK. And this is a very, very traditional JAMK student, as you can see. No furniture at home and just being there and going to school and programming at home. Yeah, typical student life. But anyways, that student life was beneficial for me. I learned some hard skills, and I really learned how to program after all those years typing on the keyboard and trying to hack my ways around with cool basics. So this was a more serious approach to that. And then came Don't Drop the Cube. This is a game I was making during my trainee or internship at Zaibatsu. It was a game we developed around 2015. It was a really simple, casual game about moving boxes from one side to another. Nevertheless, this was an important project for me and for Zaibatsu as well, because it was one of the first free-to-play titles that Zaibatsu was developing. And it was also, for me, it was a real introduction into mobile games, because this far I was creating games for myself and games for PC, basically, with Cool Basic. So this kind of shifted my way of looking at things. Doing a game on mobile even though the game wasn't that great. And finally, I got my degree certificate, which was a high point, and I celebrated that, of course, because a degree is something to be proud of. And the learnings from that period, of course, in school you learn a lot of hard skills and programming for real. That's useful. And I also learned that before I was doing all the games myself, I was trying to do all the graphics, I was trying to learn 2D, 3D, and programming all at the same time. I actually learned that doing things together is much easier. It's not easy, but it's easier than trying to do everything yourself. And I also learned that making a good game is not good enough. So if you want to succeed, it doesn't cut it if you just make a good game and put it out there. It needs something else too. There has to be a market for that game. There has to be a business plan. There has to be all that stuff to make it work. So after that period of graduating from school, doing the trainee, doing the internship, I really had to wonder and ponder to myself, could this really be a profession for me? So again, I was at a crossroads. And moving on to part 4, games as a job. And this brings me towards the present day now. So I got the job at Zaibatsu at that point. And as with any job, it's really about the availability, about the timing. I was the first employee employed by Zaibatsu at the time, so it was a milestone for me personally, but also a stepping stone or a milestone for Zaibatsu as well, having a first employee in the company. And this is me memorizing Games First 16. I was part of that event presenting Zaibatsu there and met some great people also. We have some other Zaibatsu people in the picture and other maybe familiar faces as well in the picture from the Jyväskylä community. So community is important. And I joined the Expa board in 2017. And while it's important, for me it was important to have the job and land the job, the gaming job at Zaibatsu. It was also important to keep the community close and having Expa here in central Finland and being part of that Expa community always made a big impact for me because it felt like I was part of this bigger community, not only part of the Zaibatsu team, but also this bigger community of game developers. And having that spirit, having that experience of that community was really important to me. And these are some memories from big indie pitch. We won something, I don't know what we won. It was some prize, right? But anyways, great memories and great team moments as well. We try to get together with the Zaibatsu team like at least twice a year in a bigger event and of course in smaller occasions every so often. But having these team moments is really crucial for me and the team, of course. And great memories from San Francisco as well. We were there with our CEO Jussi, marketing our games and doing some sales and business development. And again with the community. These are maybe people who might be present here as well, some of you at least. We have a really good community in Jyväskylä. Most ex-Jyväskylä or present Jyväskylä people here in the picture. And meeting John Romero, this was like the key point, like the pivotal point in the 20 years from that hobbyist to a professional and eventually meeting John Romero. That was a great moment for me, if not the greatest. So awesome. but there's a disclaimer. These were just the highlights. So people often take pictures and want to remind themselves of those great moments. And it's always important to have that positive mindset and focus on the wins. But you have to keep in mind these were just the highlights. So if you look at the reality of this journey through 20 years and 10 years as a professional, it's not all fun and games. You have a plan, you have a road in front of you. It's usually straightforward, you have the goal, you're going towards that goal. But the reality is different. There's going to be setbacks, there's going to be failures, there's going to be hardship, there's going to be all of that in that journey. So I just want to prepare you guys. It's not going to be just about meeting John Romero or doing something like that. It's going to be pain, it's going to be long working days, it's going to be accepting failure and embracing that failure altogether. So I think the key learnings from this professional path is that landing a job is only the beginning. So that's where the learning starts. And making games as a business is not easy. If making games at all is not easy, making games as a business, making profitable games, it's not really easy. And the learning really never stops. It's part of the journey. It's part of the game industry. You have to adapt. You have to readapt always to something new. And also important learnings, the team is really important. And the community is also really, really important. So having that backup, having those people around you, it's really crucial in this business. And also a reminder that destinations are really hard to reach. So if you're just looking at the milestone somewhere, it's not going to work out for you. You're going to burn out, or you're going to be set back by something. You're going to have some hiccups on the road, and those might crush you if you don't have the right mindset. So the key learning here is to embrace the journey. So take in those positive moments when you meet some people like John Romero. So embrace those moments, because those moments really help you in the hard times. So I think that's what I wanted to tell you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tarmo. That was very honest, very inspiring, and take note, find where John Romero is and meet him. You can get inspired and get some luck for your career. But there was a short time and plenty to go through. And just before I dive into the questions, we do have the Catchbox microphone over there. So if you have any questions from the audience, just raise your hand and you get the opportunity to ask, and I will prioritize your questions over mine. And also, if you are watching online, I will pick up your questions from the chat if you are there. So I'm online. Yeah. Anywho, if we go all the way back to the beginning of your presentation and to your childhood, I think it was cool to see how early you started thinking about how games are made, not only enjoying the sole purpose of gaming. Was it easy for you? If you think about the tech back then and the social environment, computers in general were quite new, and using computers for entertainment purposes, there was a lot of prejudice. And for example, my parents never supported my gaming in that sense. So can you describe what kind of environment did you have at home? Did it help you find your path?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think when I look back at that time, I was the only only person who was doing programming in northern Ostrobothnia, Haapajärvi, where I grew up. So I didn't know anyone else who was programming. So I didn't have that support from friends or family or the community at school or something like that. So I was kind of learning something on my own through the internet communities.
But you had the internet.
I had the internet, barely.
Yeah, but like because these are not things that were to be taken by granted like back in then. So was like did your parents work in tech jobs, or what's the thing?
So I think the transition to when we had internet at home, I think in the Sega era we didn't have internet. But that didn't stop me from wondering how games are made and how they're built, and that didn't really stop the creative process that was going on inside me. So I think when I moved to the DOS games and I moved to the Windows platform, that was the time when I started to gain interest in programming games myself, and also I was trying to like modify existing games. Like I tried to do my own levels in Max Payne 1. I tried to do stuff like that. So I was modifying the game files. I was trying to create something creatively to show my skills and show something of my own through modding at first. And I guess it from there I moved to programming then.
So what age is that exactly?
That would be around, I was 12 in the early 2000s.
In northern Ostrobothnia, alone with no friends or family doing any of this?
Yeah, I had friends and family, but they didn't do programming.
So not that kind of community around you that would kind of inspire you.
Yeah, at least that I would have known of.
Yeah, well that's inspiring. That shows some kind of like determination about finding a real goal that you want to pursue and then just following it even if there's no support around you. So kudos to you, Tarmo.
Thank you.
And it really seemed like in your presentation that you learned some of the important stuff early, like for example the idea of it's important to ship something even if it's not good. So can you elaborate on that? Because that's a lesson that you will meet these people who have made like tons of games in some of the events, and still they haven't published them. So what put you over that threshold?
Well, I was so young when I started doing games that maybe I didn't have the shame in me at that point. But I kind of unlearned that skill in the Kulo games era. I showed you the games. The ambition grew too high in me to show any of that stuff, that I wasn't pleased with the outcome, so I couldn't really go through with it. So it's constant learning, unlearning, and relearning something. So it's not like I found the magic bullet at 15 and then it was all like upwards from there. No, not like that.
But what fascinates me is that it seems like this process of how you approach game development kind of came to you naturally. And you've said it yourself that it has many of these like hardships, and it's not always easy, and you're not satisfied with what you do. Many people give up and say that like this is a bullshit hobby and I will change. So what made you stick around, and did you enjoy all those aspects, or what up?
Yeah, maybe I was stupid enough to not give up. So I think the perseverance and the persistence is important in game industry if you want to make games. So it's even nowadays it's not straightforward to have a career path in gaming industry. It's not like that. Maybe in other programming professions or programming something else, it's more straightforward. You study in school, you go to a job. But if you want to be in the game industry, it's not going to be as straightforward. It's really hard to land that job. It's really hard to have that portfolio that stands out and all of that. So I think everything you do on your free time is extremely more valuable than in other professions, I would say.
Yeah, that's true, and it's easy to take it from you now when you are a CTO of a gaming company and you have that path behind you, but I'm still kind of awestruck by how intuitively these thoughts seem to have come to you, like at very early age. So I don't know, perhaps you're just a natural developer, or...
Yeah, I think as I said, the game creation competitions and the Finnish gaming community back then, it had a lot of influence on that. So there were these online forums, while they were distributed on the little forums all over the internet. Those communities and those forums were a really great place to learn, and usually they were kind of like easy on the newbies like me at the time. So you could get in, you could do something and get accepted into that community and create a game and take participate in a competition. So it was a low threshold entry, the way I see it. If you had some burning or some skills in the programming, and if you were able to find those sites, so I think that's the biggest threshold. But once you got in, there were these opportunities all around you.
Yeah, and how would you see, how does it compare today? Like there are many of these events, and like it's very easy to find them, and it's very easy to find the community around you, but at the same time, probably the threshold of submitting a game has gone up, and these kind of things. So you've been in the scene like for many years, so how would you review that?
Yeah, if I go back 20 years to the very early stages of starting programming, it wasn't as mainstream as it is today. So there weren't really those big events that I would have known of, or maybe as a 12-year-old kid going to Helsinki from Haapajärvi and participating in something serious was not an option at all. But from my perspective, any of these hobby events, indie events, game jams, they've been much more mainstream today than they were back then. So there's more opportunities around you, but then again, at the same time as it's with the mobile stores, back 10 years back there weren't so many games there, but these days there's so much going on all the time that it's hard to stand out. So it's the same thing with this as well.
But perhaps the local competitions are still a kind of pathway to find your people and kind of get to represent or present your game for the very first time.
Definitely. That's an easy, definitely yes answer.
Cool. Any questions from the audience?
Okay. Is it? Yeah, okay. Has there been like moment that you were thinking like, okay, can I do this, or what's the biggest that kind of moment in your career? Like getting the feeling that maybe I don't want to do this, or maybe I cannot do this.
Yeah, every other day.
Boom.
Yeah, but seriously, I think it was back before I started studying programming or software engineering. That was like the hardest thing, because I felt I was at the crossroads at what I want to do as an adult. I think it's that moment after high school when you don't really have a degree and all the pathways are open to you, and at the same time you have no idea what you want to do when you grow up. So I think that was the biggest moment where I had to really do some self-reflection, that is game industry going to be the place where it's realistic to land a job, or should I do something else entirely?
Follow-up question related to your crossroads experience. Have you ever seriously considered any other options? Because it seems like you were at crossroads many times in your story, but you always followed the path of games. So what was there after high school, or what was there after, like, during the army you were thinking?
I mean, I think the serious candidates against game industry would have been something related to programming anyway, so maybe web development, maybe some other software engineering stuff, but probably something in alliance of that, so yeah.
And what are the factors that kind of tilted you to the game industry side?
Well, I would say the experiences in my childhood actually affected that a lot. So now this sounds like a therapy session, but yeah, those were really influential for me. And I think it's you're at a very like at the age of 13, 14, 15. It's a certain age where things affect you differently than things would affect you as an adult. So I think doing those games, taking part in those competitions at that age, having that experience somehow altered me as a person. So I think that's the reason why the tilt towards game industry was so heavy.
That's deep, and thanks for sharing. Really cool. Yeah.
Actually, this is such a topic that you can ask a lot of questions, so you should pick wisely. What's next? Like, you've gone so far. UA CDO, it's not a small thing, definitely. Like, who you see yourself in like 5 years? Who will you will have met by then, for example? Like, I know that you're actually more as a gamer, more fan of like console PC stuff. Do you have any ambition to work one day in that part of the market? Stuff like that. So, what's your ambition for the next like 5-10 years?
Yeah, that's a big question. Yeah, I think I've been constantly leveling up in my role in my career, and I don't see that stopping now. And or maybe I should say, like, especially now, since mobile game industry is at a weird place right now. Free to play is going down and stuff. So I think we're at a different stage now that we couldn't really see like 5 years back. So it's really hard to see what the next 5 years would bring. But I definitely see myself riding that wave curve, following the trend and finding that success. Maybe setting the trend, yes.
It's better
Yeah.
to set the trend.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. And then we had other question.
Yeah, thank you. It was really inspiring and great to hear about your journey, and it's really good that you highlighted that there's also ups and downs to your journey. And personally, I believe that it's really good to learn from your downs, essentially. So, what do you think are the most biggest like lessons you've learned going through these hardships? What would you like to highlight from there?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. And I think what I already said in my presentation, that you're going to be facing hardships no matter what you do, and kind of focusing on the positive in a healthy way, focusing on the positive, but also handling the negative stuff in a healthy way, and finding that balance in your life, also outside of work, finding that balance, and finding the balance between working life and your personal life is really important if you want to do this long term. Because I think for many people, working with games is it's a passion industry. So it's really hard to not know those boundaries between personal life and working life and having that healthy balance. So I think finding that is really important. And I've also had to learn that the hard way. So I think that's one learning. But definitely embracing the journey, whether it's hard, whether it's low or high, embracing the journey and not only focusing on the goals and outcomes, because you're not going to always reach those. So you have to have that mindset that can handle the setbacks and the hiccups. I think that's it.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great answer.
And I would love to follow up on that. You said that you have had to learn it kind of the hard way, but can you? Is it too sensitive, or can you elaborate more? Because like this psychological development, it's a personal topic, obviously, but at the same time, it's very relevant for all of us because we all deal with the similar type of downs. So can you kind of have there been like crucial moments when you have kind of hard something, or is it just like over time you've learned certain things? Can you put it in any kind of a summary?
Well, I as a person, I don't always learn things at that moment when things happen. But I think doing this presentation now, when I look back and reflect and do the retrospective, that's when the learning actually happens. So it's not always easy to recognize those things in the moment. So I think stopping doing that reflection, retrospective with yourself or with teammates, if possible, is really important. And recognizing those moments is important. And I think it goes hand in hand with your self-growth in a sense.
So highlighting many important things here, like retrospective, stopping to think, reflecting on things that you do before you start doing again, not to repeat the same mistakes, but to do better, these kind of things. Have they been with you before you entered work life, or are these like Zaibatsu processes that you are now talking about?
That's a good question. I think these processes have come over time. For sure, it's something I've picked up from the awesome Zaibatsu community and the working environment. I think the working environment at Zaibatsu encourages you to stop and think and work on yourself. So yes.
Thanks for sharing. And you also mentioned like community, Zaibatsu community, but also the Expa community couple of times during your presentation, and the importance of the community. Now, obviously, like what the community can give to each of us, it depends on like where we are at life and what is our next goal and so on. So, like being an employee in a small local studio here, what were the concrete benefits from being an active part of the community?
Well, there's like a two-sided answer for this. So there's obviously the professional benefits of knowing people, knowing different people in different networks, and through those networks, then perhaps reaching people you wouldn't otherwise reach. But then there's by that I meant the business perspective. And then there's the personal, professional side to this as well. I think is being part of those board memberships and stuff like that can develop you as a person as well, and professionally you as a leader as well. So I think that's the reason why those are really important.
So basically getting the kind of experience that you would get from work, but from a little bit different perspective than your usual work role, and also able to get that kind of perspective even if you're not currently in a position somewhere else.
Yeah, precisely. I think you can learn a lot from outside of your working environment also. Of course, inside as well, but from the outside you were just elevating that.
And Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah, it's a thought that comes to my mind because like we are basically what we're doing here is we're promoting proactivity for people, like be part of the community, be active, be out there, show your games, pitch, yada yada yada. It's like a continuous, like the opportunities to do something are endless, and it's also kind of you mentioned earlier that it's important to kind of be careful not to burn yourself out and that kind of thing. So do you have like a perspective on choosing your battles? Any lessons related to that to keep the focus right, because you can easily get lost in the forest?
Yeah, that's a great topic. Yeah, you definitely have to choose your battles. Whether it's like a business strategy where you want to focus on mobile, you want to focus on console or doing something like that. That's like the crucial element to it. But also in your role as well, you're not going to be good at everything, which I also learned in my Kulo Games experimentation, that you can't really be a best artist, best programmer, best designer and all that combined together. Probably I couldn't. So really choosing what do you want to do, what do you want to focus on, what do you want to get good at, what do you want to like excel at, and then going with that, and have other people in the team who shine in other areas and support you and the team and the community and the company.
Yeah, so that's also team building advice. So surround yourself with people who are better than you in the other areas. There was a question, yeah.
You actually pronounced that word, which maybe works as a hook for me, that word leader. It's an important word, and basically, judging by your title, you probably are supposed to have some leadership duties involved with your job. And since we kind of, throughout your presentation, we've had a chance to look back to your humble beginnings, and there's definitely a path from that to a leadership position. Have you ever felt that you are actually a natural leader, like a born leader, and you would kind of see yourself even back then that one day you could do that, or it was something you didn't see coming, kind of, and how hard it was for you to step up and do something like that? And if you can share maybe a couple of things which you found the most challenging about finding yourself in the shoes of a leader, that would be, I think, great inspiration for others as well. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying this question because it really makes me think back. Was I ever like a natural leader? Probably not. I could have not seen myself in that position as a kid, and probably even in school. No way. But in another way, if I think back, I was always doing things on my own, like doing those concepts on my own, doing the graphics, doing the programming. I wanted to do everything myself. I had one teammate who was doing the sounds and music. He was really helpful, so I guess it makes us a team of two. But even in that, I really didn't see myself as a leader. It was more of a duo, in a sense. So I think I've grown into this role as a leader. Does that answer the first part of your question?
Yeah. Yeah, and this actually brings us to a very interesting topic of like what is our idea of leadership, because you said that you didn't feel like a natural leader, but to me, leaders, usually entrepreneurs or like people who show the way for other people, are the ones who are the pioneers who kind of dig the path. And when you described your childhood and doing this stuff on your own and finding the answers and then finding the opportunities and all of that, I think that shows leadership quality. So just food for thought.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I was answering based on the feeling I had back then. I did not feel I was a natural leader or a leader at all back then. So I've kind of have to come to terms with that in my career, in my profession. But yeah, to the second part of your question, that was, are there any tips for leadership?
Rather, what have you found to be especially challenging when you stepped up, if anything, and also, actually forgot myself already what was that say, but at least that as well.
So any special hardship when becoming a leader in your career path?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of hardship with that. And I think the struggles are very much internal, because you don't feel like you're a leader, then you have to grow into that role, and you also have to accept some limitations you might have. I think I still have to come to terms with that, like, expert identity role. Like, I grew from maybe a game programmer to a tech lead at some point, and then from a tech lead to maybe a project manager at some point. So it's kind of like this gradual growth into these leadership roles. So, but I wouldn't say it was specifically easy to do that. So it was gradual, so that helped. It wasn't like jumping from a game programmer to a CDO at once. So it was gradual development over the years, and that really helped with the progress there. Not sure if I answered your question.
There's no right answer.
Yeah, no. If I may mirror that a little bit, like what I'm getting from all of this is basically like, because as a leader you have to kind of expose yourself a little bit. You have to expose your ideas, and leader is not the one who has the right answers every time, but the one who dares to ask the right questions, for example, and kind of face the uncertainty. So any can you elaborate on any like experiences of taking leadership tech-wise on like major decisions, and what kind of process is related to that?
Yeah, that's another great question. Well, I think involving people in decision making makes it easier for you to make decisions. So you don't have to make decisions just based on you, because you're the CTO. You make decisions and you dictate how things are done, and what technologies we use, and how we do use those technologies. Because, like I said, coming to terms with the expert identity versus the leader identity, and kind of pushing that expert identity back a bit, and becoming the leader instead, and giving those other experts in the team the room and involvement in the decision making as well. So leveraging that understanding and knowledge in the team is what it's all about.
We have time for like one more question.
So heavy topics, but here's a lighter one. When can we expect a sequel to the Rival? Maybe midlife crisis or something?
That's the best question so far. Yeah, I've been actually thinking about that a lot, because I've been going back to those memories of doing those first games, and really wanted to make a sequel to this game. A sequel to a game that nobody knows about. So that's the only, but now you know about it, so maybe the sequel makes sense.
The hype is built. Yes. There was one more serious question from the chat side, which is perhaps kind of big for you to answer alone. It's will Finland be spared from the game dev layoffs? but if you take your like a small studio perspective on this and talking about like the ups and downs, obviously the industry is currently not in the strongest position. Everything's kind of changing again, and it's a little bit uncertain that what the next trend is going to be and how things are going to develop. So how do you cope when you cannot see the future yet, and what kind of measures do you take to kind of be able to take action when the time is right?
Yeah, I wish I had a crystal ball, but I don't. So I just have to find those ways to cope with the fact that you can't know everything. And I have no authority to answer that question. I don't know. I have no idea. Probably not going to be spared in comparison to other countries, I'm afraid. Yeah, it's already happening.
But with the perseverance that you showcased, we're probably gonna make it through it somehow. So not to leave you hanging by a negative thought at the end. We are running out of time, so thank you so much for sharing your story. That was super inspirational. Let's give a huge applause to Tarmo.
Thank you.
And thanks for all the online people watching this time. We are returning in March again, the last Tuesday of the month. It will be Meetup time, so mark it in your calendars. Other than that, remember to check out the Expa membership at expa.fi and join our Slack and become a member of the community that so well supports all the aspiring game developers around here. Thank you, and see you next month. And for the people on site, now we get to the leisure part of the evening, and we have the demo corner ready, waiting over there. We have at least 2 laptops over there, so go check them out. And the mic is open, so if you want to pitch your game, the teams are welcome to come here and showcase. And also, if you have any other projects, any other announcements that you want to make, like feel free. The only announcement that I'm pressing on you is that join Expa. So ask me if you want to do it. Thanks, and let's mingle.